Hi, welcome back to my channel. I really want to talk about this book. It's Notes of a Crocodile by Qiu Miaojin, translated from Chinese to English by Bonnie Huie. This book is kind of considered as a Taiwanese queer classic, and I was so glad to have read this book because I ended up really enjoying this one. And I actually couldn't wait to talk about this book. Like, I couldn't wait up until the upcoming recent reads to talk about this book, and that's why I have this single book review video for this one. How did this book make me feel? It made me feel such a mixture of emotions. I felt sad, I felt happy, basically it's bittersweet. It was kind of complicated. This book was so many things. So this book has a main plot line, and it's about a young woman who lives in Taipei, in late 80s Taipei, post-martial law at the time. And so her name is not given, but her nickname is Lazi. And so basically we are seeing Lazi's life as a young woman, from the period when she just about to start college all the way until she leaves university, shortly after she leaves university. If I'm not mistaken, I think she leaves university at the end. That's not a spoiler, it's just a it's just the time setting of this book. But basically we are looking at Lazi's life at this particular period. Now what's interesting about Lazi is that she is she's a young woman. She's a young lesbian woman, and this is going to be like the theme of this book. She is also a person who is experiencing some kind of mental health issues, and this is going to be explored really in depth in this book as well, and that is going to be explored in such a way that it entangles a lot with her sexual orientation, her identity as a lesbian woman, and how her personal issues, her demons, just sort of spills over to her attempts in forming a relationship, both romantic and friendship, romantic relationships and friendship with other characters in this book, and basically just how her inner conflicts are going to clash with people around her. And so it really leads to a storyline that is quite dramatic, even more so when you consider the fact that this character is young. See, that's why young is really important. When you consider that this character is young, she's in college age, about 20-something, and there is this really consistent tone of angst in this book. Now, before this, I usually didn't really like books with angsty characters, and especially angsty characters who act melodramatically. Like, I just can't. It reminded me of Bonjour Tristesse, and I think I might want to reread that one, to try to appreciate it more. But I just found it a little bit difficult to read books that had young characters who acted angsty and dramatic. But then, when I think about how I used to be young, I mean, I'm pretty young right now too, but I used to be quite angsty as well. I mean, didn't we all? I suppose, you could forgive that a little bit. It's part of the experience of being at that age, right? I thought I was going to dislike this book because of that, because of all the angstiness. But I ended up liking it, loving it so much, because I felt like the angstiness really fit with the tone of this book. It really fit with the entire theme of this book. It fits also with everything that happens in here, you know, the nature of the relationships between characters being explored in here, the character development trajectory of the protagonist is also really bound to that youthfulness, you know, the impulsiveness that is brought on by some I would say lack of experience, lack of wisdom, and how it would eventually lead her to a place where she experienced character development. And I feel like all of those elements, they just fit in together. Like they all hug each other really snugly in this book. It's all very well crafted. I mean, you consider the fact that the structure of this novel is kind of unusual. I mean, it's not weird, but it's just different from a traditional prose where the chapters are basically just you could say they are a series of diary entries written by Latze herself, and so we see the chapters being arranged in numbers, and they are like chapters and subchapters, and the chapters are basically just like sort of different notebooks that contain, you know, the different vignettes of what happens in Latze's life at that period. So there is a sense of chronology in this book, but at the same time the tone can be wildly inconsistent. I mean, the angstiness is there, it's consistent, but the writing style, not the tone, the writing style can be a bit inconsistent, because some parts feel like it has this kind of epistolary vibe. Some parts just feel like, you know, it's like characters, Latze is just vomiting her thoughts out into, you know, onto the paper, and some parts just feel a little bit more self-controlled and reserved. Some parts just feel really unhinged. It's inconsistent in terms of style, and I would say how it looks on paper, but you could see that there is a common thread where the entire storyline is about how Latze tries to reconcile her existence in the society, and which we can sort of see to be fairly homophobic. You know, reconcile it with how she's going to live her life, you know, how she's going to present herself, how she's going to handle her relationships in a healthy way. So yeah, this book is pretty intense. There are a lot of things that could be triggering in this novel. I have the content warnings down in the description box below, but to just list a few, we have things like, you know, obvious things like homophobia. We have things like drug abuse, mental health issues such as depression, self-harm, and suicide. A lot of things. We also have violence in this book, so it is a very intense book if you are considering reading this. Now, another thing that I really love about this book is that interspersed in between the chapters about Latze's own story as, you know, as a person in her own society, there is also a minor subplot involving a anthropomorphic crocodile who has to live in a society of human, but this crocodile has to constantly wear a human suit so that other humans would not clock them as a crocodile. And I think it's very on the nose. Like, we can pretty much figure out what the symbolism of the crocodile is in this subplot. And it feels kind of separate at first, with the main story involving Latze, with how surreal it feels, you know, obviously, you know, an animal living among humans. But this particular subplot also feels very rich in and of itself. There are so many things that happen in this subplot, where basically the humans in that society are starting to experience this kind of this rising panic, mortal panic, involving the existence of crocodiles among humans. And the humans are kind of like worried about how many could be the crocodiles could be existing right now among us. It's scary, right? And there are factions like anti-croc, pro-croc, and it's really exciting. There are also things like hidden meetings of fellow crocodiles, where they have to they would gather in secret, and in their gathering they would sort of have fun and dance with upbeat pop song. Really reminds me of that Kylie song that is popular right now. But yeah, this subplot is really short. It is supposedly written by Lazi, but it's also really rich, and eventually it doesn't take long for you to realize the connection with the main story. But one particular connection that I really love is that how in the main story Lazi is struggling with issues of self-loathing, and this is pretty much the way that her self-loathing is manifested within her is that she starts to view herself as someone who is monstrous. So there is this kind of monstrousness as a motif that runs through this novel, and how that pretty much serves as a bridge to the crocodile subplot, where you literally have a character who is a literally monster with fangs and sharp teeth and claws and bad skin and stuff. But what I really love about that is how it really accentuates the internalized homophobia that Lazi has to deal with while being in a relationship with another woman, and how she sort of sees herself as one half of that couple, with her partner, and how she kind of sees herself as this like really rough someone who could possibly hurt the partner because of how monstrous she feels, how horrible she feels as a person in this book. And I think the result is that it makes for a really visceral reading experience. It makes it really sad. It feels very palpable. That whole pathetic feeling that the character has about themselves. It just feels really tangible in this aspect. So I really appreciate that one. It's so good. So I guess that's all I'm gonna say about this book. Obviously, I will recommend this to all of y'all out there, and I'm so glad that this year I've read some really wonderful queer literature, fiction. A few months ago, I read Camila Sosa Villada's Bad Girls, and I thought that was really, really wonderful. Now, a little bit of something about this novel was sometime after the publication of Notes of a Crocodile, the author Qiu Miaojin passed away because of suicide. And there's something about the storyline, the arc of the character in Notes of a Crocodile, and how it relates to the author, that one, it does feel somewhat autobiographical, perhaps. I'm not sure, but there is certainly this kind of really strong honesty and passionate vibe that I'm getting from this novel. It makes you kind of wonder how much of it is confessional from the author, how much of it was fictional, a construct attributed to the protagonist, but it really felt super honest, and I really appreciated that. And also the character arc of the protagonist from the beginning to the ending, it really reminds me of The Belgia by Sylvia Plath. Not only with how the author Plath ended up afterwards, you know. But also how the novel itself, you know, the character arc of the protagonist in the Bell Jar felt really similar to the ones in Notes of a Crocodile. So yeah, there's definitely like comparison about that. Both books also had this kind of you know, really youthful voice to it as well. When I read the Bell Jar, there was something that felt kind of YA about it, but it was also really incredible. You know, it just felt really young. It was about how a young person was dealing with something, and it was told through this like really young voice, same as Notes of a Crocodile as well. The voice was really on point, so I love that. Anyway, I guess that's all, and I'll see you in the next video. So let me know if you have read this book, let me know if you're interested in reading this book. Yeah, let me know if you have any other comments, and yeah, I'll see you again next time. Bye bye.